whereas the online backup and recovery is more heavily branded and does really well with file and folder, up to 200,000 files and up to 5 to 10 gig file sizes. So you launch ImageStream, and it looks pretty similar. It's a new UI from the file and folder system. But we have a backup tab and a restore tab, and you'd have to log in with this first, but I was already logged in. So we have different options here where you could have different caching options depending on what type of file. Our system does not cache image files, so it's not going to cache those. The cache is important to understand because the cache does require overhead space. So overhead space is for the Delta level backup for the file level backups. So Delta level backups means basically a block level incremental. Incremental backup means we're going to negotiate what's changed and what hasn't changed and only deal with the changed things. But there are different levels of change. So there's a file level change, which is standard. Incremental typically means at the file level, what files have changed, what files haven't. Leave the ones that haven't changed alone. Back up the files that have changed. Back them up altogether. With a block level or a Delta backup system, we're going to go into the file and say what specifically about this file has changed. So just think of it as a unit of measurement. So many cups in a pint, pints in a quart, quarts in a gallon. Sorry, I'm not doing liters today. So many bits in a byte, bytes in a block, blocks in a file. So we'll go into, say, for instance, a PST file, if you're backing up something like that on someone's workstation. If it's 3 gigs, it could take 3 or 4 hours to back up. An incremental file system, which is common for file and folder backup systems out there, especially the ones geared towards consumers, is that it'll back up the entire 3 gig PST file every time that it changes. Our system's going to dive into it and say, oh no, we've only had 30 megs of changes since the last time we backed it up. But in order to do that calculation, we need the local file referenceable, so we have a cache. You can go to the options, into the folder options, and change the location of the cache folder here. That's important because you don't want your backups to stop just because you ran out of cache space, or your system to really slow down because you ran out of cache space. People hate that. On individual workstations and laptops, or large file servers are typically the only places you need to worry about this. And the workstations and laptops of today come with such ridiculous hard drive space that it's very rare that would ever be an issue for an individual user. Cache can often equal about 70 to 80% of the total backup set. For a file server, you may want to actually pay more attention, as you could have, a terabyte file server, you need a terabyte of cache space. Or you could just turn caching off altogether. That way you don't have to worry about it. But then you don't have the Delta level backup. So we go to the backup wizard, set up online backup. And it's going to say, okay, choose the files to back up. The first time you run it, it's going to do a little system scan. But here we have the F drive, which is our backup drive. We have that selected with all the images in it to go off-site. And that is typically going to be our backup set from ImageStream. Let's treat F as our staging machine. So F is our staging machine. We're just going to back it up. That's it. But if you wanted, you could back up all the documents, you could back up pictures, whatever it is. So hit next. Then you have the scheduler. One good thing to do when you go into each location is be aware of the security. For best practices, there are a few things that it's always good to look out for when you're installing the backup software, whether it's ImageStream or the file folder. First is local PC settings. You want to make sure that if you're on a workstation, that the UAC from Windows 7 is turned down or turned off during the installation. Sometimes the UAC can cause issues when you're installing programs. Turning it up thereafter is usually fine. Other local PC settings, we need to make sure that .NET is installed and up to date. And actually, we support .NET 3.5, which is backwards compatible, all the way to .NET 2.0. So any version of 2.0, 3.5.net is fine. If you have .NET 4.0 only, that doesn't work. You will need to install 3.5. Once they install right next to each other, it's no big deal. Just go to Microsoft and update it. So that's good to know. Other local PC settings, any proactive spyware or antivirus can sometimes cause issue with recurring backups just because our behavior is very much like a virus, and proactive spyware programs base their activity on behavior. So you would want to make sure to whitelist all of the executables in our install directories to make sure that that's fine. And also, again, just whitelist on your local network, sosonlinebackup.com. So again, local network settings is probably one of the more common settings you have to change when using this service to make sure everything's going to run fine. You want to make sure that, again, sosonlinebackup.com is whitelisted. That way you know that the emails are going to get through, you know that backups are going to run and get launched. Your firewalls, maybe John can speak more specifically to this, but I believe Barracuda is really the only one that's a little finicky when it comes to whitelisting our stuff.
Yeah, we've seen some custom rules in some of the Barracuda firewalls that are blocking SOSonlinebackup.com emails. And when you call Barracuda and ask them about it, they say, no, you're not on any blacklist. However, we've had partners actually let us log in and show us the rule. So I think it's just a competition thing. But usually it's not a problem.
Yeah, it could be. They do have an online backup program they're trying to launch out with. So, but whatever the case, any firewall, you want to make sure that ports 443 and ports 80 are open. Typically not a problem. That's 443 is SSL, 80 just to get out and in. You want to make sure that's cool, and then also just whitelist all the executables that are running with our service. You can find those in the install directory, and also make sure that SOSonlinebackup.com is on a whitelist. So we have our online backup schedule now, so we can say, okay, I want to back up the end of this wizard. For your first install, I recommend just selecting a single file from, and make sure it's from a directory you want to back up. And then go ahead and update that there. So you want to make sure that you're running a backup just so you can confirm that all the local network settings are fine and all the PC settings are fine. And from there you can schedule and go off-site. But we do see often where you go in and you do the install, you select a backup set and schedule it to run at, say, later that night. You leave, and then we come back the next day and find that there was some local network setting that stopped it from running. So it can waste some time pretty easily. So it's always good to do one quick backup to make sure it's running fine. Frequency, you can do hourly, although we really recommend hourly for file and folder backup sets. So like workstations, beautiful to do it every couple of hours. It happens so quickly your users will not even notice. They'll get an email if they're on the email alert system, and that's fun. Email backup reports. So we have here, just you can check this box, put an email address in. It's always good to try putting in a open email address like Gmail or Yahoo, or some email address you've gotten reports from before. Depending on your ISP or your hosting provider that you do email with, sometimes you got to do a little more configuration with them. Sometimes the email that we're sending out gets junked as spam at the ISP level. One of the reasons is it is coming from the SOS Online Backup domain. It's coming from a robot, and we're going to mask it with the email address that you've given us. So sometimes those things can add up to a do not allow ruling. Not that common, but typically the backup is generated from the end of the backup session running. And if the backup does finish, then the email will be sent. And most of the time, if you don't get an email, it's because it's in your junk mail or it got blocked at some other point. You can go ahead and submit a case of that with support if you're unable to, get emails after you whitelisted and all that, but not too common. So we hit finish. Then run a backup. If I go to restore, go to online restore, the wizard is kind of cool because it says, oh, I can refresh my entire backup set to show what was active on a specific day. And that's a little more helpful with the image-based solution. But for the most part, I just like to go to the classic view because it's bigger. I can see more information. Let me expand this. And I can see all the machine names on the left here, which is what you would see in the wizard also. It's just a lot smaller of a screen. And then per file, you can get specific versions of the file you're looking for. So this little drop down and the date modified, you get this drop down and go through that. And then you just select whatever you want to be recovered. So that's image stream. Real quickly on Pulse. Pulse, it's a license to kill. You know, you can use it as many times as you like, but you do have to enter the license every time you do an install. Pulse install is not the clearest thing in the world, and you got to live with it for another couple months until it's just part of the program. But if we were to go to a Pulse installation, it first asks you for your Pulse license key, and then it asks you to set the service login. When it's asking for the service login, it's asking for the Windows domain credentials for that specific machine and that specific user. So a real quick way to understand, okay, what should my username be? Just go to the command prompt and you just type in who am I, and it gives you your Windows domain username right there. So I would type in as the service login demo1/user1, and then I'd type in my password and it'd be fine. And then Pulse runs and monitors the backup as it runs. So it'll throw information to the cloud. And if you're looking at the Pulse logs, there's a whole Pulse section in our knowledge base that goes through installation and reading Pulse logs if you're having an issue installing Pulse, or if you're not getting the information you need. Pulse has a couple of sections. I don't believe it's running right now, but there are 3 different levels of errors in Pulse. There's low severity, medium severity, and high severity. Low and medium, you generally don't need to worry about. Those are typically things where it's like medium severity error, scheduler object not found. It just means that the backup hadn't been scheduled yet. High severity error could not parse storage.exe. That means that you haven't installed the backup account and it is not recognizing this machine currently. So then that would be an issue where you would need to act on it or go to support. So high severity error is the only thing to actually worry about if you're looking at the Pulse logs, and that's much we really need to